All right, let's talk about banned books. Those stories that are considered so powerful, so dangerous, that someone, somewhere, decides they need to be locked away. So let's really get into it. What is it that makes a bunch of paper and ink so threatening? Is it a single idea, a controversial character, or is it something deeper? We're going to look at some of the most famous banned books and figure out what their stories can tell us about the people who were so afraid of them.
Okay, first up, probably the most common reason a book gets in trouble. It takes a direct shot at political power and the people holding it. And this is just a fascinating contrast, right? On one side, you have a book that's a warning, screaming, don't let power be abused. On the other, you have a literal instruction manual on how to get that power for yourself. And the wild thing is, they've both been banned, but for completely opposite reasons.
Let's start with a classic, George Orwell's Animal Farm. The story's pretty simple on the surface. Animals kick out their human farmer, but then the pigs take over and become even worse tyrants. Now, it's a clear allegory for Stalin's rise to power, so no surprise the Soviet Union banned it immediately. But here's where it gets interesting. It was also challenged in the West. First, because Britain didn't want to tick off their Soviet allies in WWI. And later, it was banned in some US schools, get this, for having talking animals. Apparently, the brutal totalitarianism was fine, but a pig having a political thought, that crossed a line.
And this one line, wow, it just captures the whole point of the book. It's a masterclass in propaganda, isn't it? It perfectly sums up the hypocrisy of a system that claims equality while creating a new, even more brutal hierarchy. It's the most polite way ever of saying, we're all in this together, but my slice of the pie is way bigger than yours.
Now let's flip the script to its cynical twin. Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power doesn't warn you about tyrants, it gives you a step-by-step guide on how to become one. With laws like, crush your enemy totally. Is it really a shock that it got banned in several US prisons? I mean, the wardens probably figured giving inmates a textbook on manipulation and control wasn't the best idea for keeping things orderly.
Okay, next up, we've got the books that get banned not because they threaten the government, but because they threaten our comfort. They hold up a mirror, and sometimes people really, really don't like what they see in the reflection.
Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man is a perfect example of this. And no, it's not science fiction. The man is invisible because American society simply refuses to see him, to see his humanity. This book was banned in so many schools, and the official excuse was usually obscenity. But let's be real. The real crime of the book was its raw, unflinching look at racism. It forced a conversation that a lot of people just did not want to have.
And then there's Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five. This is not your grandfather's war novel. The hero, Billy Pilgrim, is unstuck in time. So one minute, he's a POW in WW2, surviving a horrific firebombing of Dresden. The next, poof, he's been abducted by aliens and is on display in a zoo. The whole thing is chaotic and absurd, and that's the point. Vonnegut is showing us how disorienting and utterly senseless the trauma of war is.
And you have this simple phrase, so it goes, repeated over and over, more than 100 times. Every time someone dies, so it goes. It's this fatalistic, almost detached shrug. And that anti-war sentiment was considered so unpatriotic, so dangerous, that the book was banned, and in some cases even publicly burned. All for challenging the idea of war as a glorious thing.
And hey, uncomfortable truths aren't just for grown-ups. Would you believe a Dr. Seuss book got banned? The Lorax was actually pulled from school libraries in some logging communities in California. Why? They argued it was an unfair attack on their industry that was brainwashing kids. The threat here wasn't political, it was economic.
And finally, we get to the books that don't just push boundaries, they completely shatter them. These are the ones that challenge our deepest ideas about morality, religion, and just basic decency.
So, to get our next book, you need to understand this literary trick, the unreliable narrator. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a storyteller you just can't trust. And there is no more famous, or frankly, more unsettling example than the narrator of Lolita. That's Humbert Humbert, the narrator, describing his obsession with a 12-year-old. You see what the author Nabokov does? He uses this incredibly beautiful poetic language to trap you inside the mind of a predator. You're being seduced by his words at the exact same moment you're being repulsed by his actions. And that right there is the terrifying genius of the book. So, of course, Lolita was banned all over the world for obscenity. But its real power, its real horror, goes beyond the subject matter. It's about how the book dissects manipulation and self-deception, showing you exactly how a monster can convince himself that he's actually a tragic hero. But some lines, when they're crossed, provoke a reaction that's far more violent. When Salman Rushdie published the Satanic Verses in 1988, the backlash was immediate and it was global. Because it reimagined parts of Islamic history, there were book bans, firebombings of bookstores, and then, in 1989, a fatwa, a religious death sentence, was issued against Rushdie himself. A literary debate had suddenly become one of the biggest free speech crises of the century.
And then at the absolute furthest end of the spectrum, you have this thing. Written by the Marquis de Sade while he was in prison, the 120 Days of Sodom isn't just suggestive. It is a cold, meticulous, almost scientific catalog of human cruelty. It's been banned almost everywhere since the day it was written, because it doesn't just challenge one moral boundary, it seems designed to burn them all to the ground.
So, after going through all of this, what have we learned? What is the real power that makes a simple story so dangerous?
Well, the key point is this. Books get banned when they're seen as a threat. Animal Farm threatened political control. The Lorax threatened economic comfort, Lolita threatened moral boundaries, and the Satanic Verses threatened religious beliefs. Each ban points directly to a society's deepest anxieties.
And that really brings us to the heart of it. A banned book is essentially a mirror. The act of banning it tells you very little about the book itself, but it tells you everything about the fears of the people who want it gone. It shows you their insecurities, their anxieties, and the ideas they are most afraid to question. Which leaves us with one final thought. The next time you hear a book has been banned, don't just ask what's so dangerous about the book. Ask yourself, what's so fragile about the people who feel the need to ban it?